Hello, it's Tony here. I'm very interested in the issue of poverty reduction, and so I'm making this video about Africa. I've just finished today reading a book called The End of Poverty by Jeffrey Sachs. Jeffrey Sachs is a professor in economics. He was originally at Harvard, and now he's at the University of Columbia, and he also works for Kofi Annan at the United Nations. And in the book, which I would recommend to anyone, Jeffrey Sachs makes a very strong case that it is in all our interests to fight poverty and eliminate it. And the reason for that is that he says that very poor countries can become failed states, and that they harbour terrorists. But most people would say that poverty, extreme poverty, which involves people dying of starvation, if we can, we should try to eliminate it anyway. Now, I just watched a video by John Stossel and read some of the responses to it, and he made the point that increasing foreign aid is a bad idea because it will just all go into the pockets of corrupt leaders. There's some truth to that, but it's also quite out of date in that a lot of the corruption dates back to the Cold War, when we gave money and we knew it was going into the Swiss bank accounts of these leaders, and we didn't care as long as they weren't communists. But these leaders still exist now, but we know who they are. And the very important point to make, and I think that some of the people who it's easy to detect racism, is that Africa is a continent, not a country. You can't read about one corrupt African leader and then say the whole of Africa is like that. Having said that, there is a link between poverty and corruption. A poor country will perhaps have poor systems in place. The civil servants would be poorly paid and therefore willing to take bribes. But there is a way around these things, and you can't just write off countries because of corruption. Though I would say, if you looked at the country and you were convinced that the money was going to be wasted, then yes, you wouldn't get involved. So perhaps there is some limit as to what can be done, but there's certainly no justification for just saying Africa corrupt, leave it alone. The other thing about this I see when people talk about foreign aid, they say foreign aid creates dependency, and they're obviously aligning it with their thoughts about welfare. But you cannot compare foreign aid to a country in sub-Saharan Africa, particularly one with terrible problems with AIDS, malaria or TB. You can't compare that with welfare, because if someone's living on $1 a day, they're farming, the soil is very weak, very poor in nutrients, the rains don't come, the people starve to death. And unfortunately, if you're on $1 a day, you work as hard as you like, you're never going to lift yourself out of that. you're never going to be able to afford fertilizers or anything else. So foreign aid is about getting people to the stage where they will always have enough food. In other words, if they've got fertilizer, they are producing a surplus, and perhaps they are saving it for themselves and they're selling it in the market. So foreign aid is necessary, and there has to be more of it, and I will perhaps return to that in a future video.